Hi, I'm Niels from Keep It Grün, and if you want to know how to build your own bathtub worm composter and why this pipe is so important, stay tuned. You are probably asking yourself, why should I have a worm composter? What is so special about it? Well, the speciality lies in the biology of the worm. When the worm processes your kitchen waste, it enriches it with various microorganisms that are important for your soil. That means you end up with a very fertile compost. But that's not all. Your worm composter continuously yields a very special worm leakage, often called worm tea. This nutrient-rich liquid can easily be distributed while watering your plants. But before we set up the worm composter, we need to find the right location. Most suitable are shady areas, for example in corners, next to large walls or under trees. After all, your worms do not like the sun, they do not like the heat and are most comfortable when they are protected against it. The very first thing we need is the actual home of the worms. For this we need a large container that is impervious to water. Some people use large plastic tubs like this mortar tray here, but we decided to go with something slightly larger. We took an old bathtub and we will prepare it today, and you can join us. The most important issue is moisture. Under no circumstances should waterlogging develop in your worm composter, and you need good ventilation. The bathtub offers us some advantages here. It already has an opening down here where stagnant moisture can escape, and another one here which helps us with the ventilation. But that's not enough. Therefore we must add a ventilation pipe that is covered with small holes. You can just use a cordless screwdriver to make it. So, we put up the worm composter now. It is important that it is placed at a slight angle, so the worm tea can float down to the drain where we can catch it. You can just use a bucket for that. It is very important that the pipe is unblocked, so that from the opening down here all the way up to the upper end air can flow. That is critical since we want to get air into the worm composter through these small holes. And when we add the pipe to the bathtub, this gap must not be completely tight. There is air flowing through the pipe itself, but no water. If there is waterlogging, it actually accumulates here, where it must be able to drain through. But the 1 mm gap is sufficient.
Was ist denn 013? Weißt du, was das ist?
Well, it is almost straight. The last important step in the construction of the worm composter is the covering. Of course, we have to protect our worms against the light, the sun, the dryness, and also from every other bird that comes along in search of a tasty worm meal. We have used old OSB boards, which are a common leftover from renovation works. Mind that the cover should not be sealed up tight, so I cut a hole a little larger. Thereby the air can easily flow in here and out there. If the bathtub is too big for you, you can also take a tub like this. You just need to do the exact same steps. Drill a couple of holes in the bottom where the worm juice can run out. Make a couple of holes in the sides so air can get in. And then cover it up so no animal can get in or out. This one we have used as a winter home for our worms, because our frosty winter would kill them. But if you don't have frosty winters, just leave them in the bathtub outside. But before your worms can move in, we have to prepare them a nice and cozy home. Because sometimes your worms would like to take a vacation from your nitrogen-rich kitchen waste. And they prefer to spend this vacation in a carbon-rich medium, like straw. That's why we prepare them a comfortable bed of straw. For the bathtub, about 15 to 20 centimeters are sufficient. And then we can put the worms right on top of that. To make the straw more palatable for your worms, we can moisten it a little. Then it is no problem for them to digest it. Some people use cardboard instead of straw in their composter. We explicitly advise against it, because cardboard contains unwanted PFC. What that is and why you do not want to have it in your garden, you can find out in this article. Now we are good to go. We can finally put the worms into their new home. The uncomposted material that is on top of the winter worm composter we will put on one side, in our case the right side. And the already composted material below, which contains all the worms, we put on the left side. That has the following reason. The worms will move towards the uncomposted material, and after some time we can take the finished compost from the left side without removing many worms. If you have more kitchen waste, you should add it to the right side until that is full. Only then you switch sides, push the uncomposted material to the left side and start adding kitchen waste to the left side. I know that was a lot of information all at once. If you want it all summed up in a nicely written article for you to read, feel free to have a look in our guide article. You can find the link in the video description. Every once in a while, when we add some kitchen scraps to the compost, we should mix a handful of straw in between. This helps with aeration and gives your worms a healthy, nutritious diet. Now let's talk about what you can and can't put in your worm composter. Basically, you can add all sorts of raw fruits and vegetable scraps. For example, the greens of onions. Tea bags, as long as there is no metal clip on it and they contain no plastic. Remains of wild garlic, peppers, onions, but also coffee brew, they like that very much, and eggshells. If you add eggshells as a whole, they will end up in the finished compost as bigger chunks. If you don't want that, you can grind them up into a fine powder before adding them to the worm composter. What you should not put in your worm composter: meat, dairy products like cheese, and other animal products like eggs. Citrus fruits you should only add in small quantities, because the citrus fruits have a high acidity and the worms are very sensitive to that. What you should also keep in mind, ideally the fruit and vegetable scraps that we add to the compost should not be treated nor sprayed with any pesticides. Organically grown is best, because all the chemicals that we add with those scraps end up in our compost and can harm our worms and our garden. If you want your worms to work through the compost as quickly as possible, you should chop up the food before giving it to them. I don't really care how fast they do it, so I put most ingredients as they come. However, this would even be too big for my liking, and I would cut it into smaller pieces. Now let's turn to the maintenance of your worm composter. The most common problem is that it is too moist. And the very first thing you should do about it is to check the drainage. Can the water drain easily so that no waterlogging develops? Next, you should check the ventilation. Is enough air flowing in? Maybe leave the lid open for some time to increase the airflow. Adding a little more straw can also help with the ventilation. If your composter becomes too dry, then you can just add some water with a watering can to moisten it. If your composter is molding, don't worry, it doesn't harm your worms. Just cover the surface with some ready compost or straw. Many people like to add mineral mixtures to their worm composter. If you want, you can do that too, but since we regularly add eggshells, we should be okay without it. If you order worms, they usually come in a package of 500 to 1000. With these sizes, you should be careful to not overfeed them. In the beginning, 100 to 200 grams of food per day is enough. Later you can give them more, because they increase in numbers very quickly. But mind, their activity also depends on temperature. If you want to harvest your worm compost, you can use a simple trick. The worms do not like the daylight, and if we leave the lid open, the worms will retreat a few centimeters down into the compost. If we have finished compost on the left side, for example, the worms will dig down and we can remove a few centimeters of compost to use in our garden. And now the very best thing about the worm composter. We get valuable worm tea almost every day. It is a very nutrient-rich and microbial liquid that you can dilute 1 to 10 with water and distribute while normal watering to your plants. Because of its high microbial activity, fresh worm tea can also be used to make terra preta. If you want to know what terra preta is and how to make it, you can just watch this video over here. And don't forget to close the lid of your worm composter in the end. If you would like to be more active in your garden, you can check out our do-it-yourself playlist right here. If you want to know more about sustainable gardening, we've prepared a few how-to articles over there. And if you like what we are doing, feel free to subscribe to keep always up to date.